Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I'm Audrey Knapp, the founder of the Right Services and the author marketing specialist. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Sarah Elizabeth, and she was was it April? No, it was
It was
May.
May. I
Yeah,
think
but
it's
she's
May, yeah.
our May guest expert. So we're kind of just doing this on the fly, super casual, laid back, keeping it easy on this rainy day. Anyway, this masterclass that you did for the Author Transformation Alliance, Conversion Magic for Authors, I was really excited about this. And, everybody still loves it. We really have great feedback from it. And I'm so glad that you could bring this to us. Could you tell us a little bit about your intention for that masterclass?
Sure. So my intention was to break down, I guess essentially break down sort of complicated concepts that we hear all over the internet. So people are like sales funnels and marketing and like all this kind of complicated stuff. And I know that it gets us really nervous, especially when especially like authors, but like everyone, you're coming into it and you're not familiar with it. So just to break down stuff and be like, you already have the skills, you already know how to do this. It's just to kind of understand it in this new form.
Yes,
Yeah, that was me.
absolutely. That's perfect. And then you also provided some wonderful tips and really brought to mind the congruency and making sure that everything's saying the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, real quick, can you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I call myself a business coach specializing in technology and epic content strategy. So largely what I do is what I did for you guys all the time. So break down, what seems very complicated and like a lot of moving parts sort of aspects of starting an online platform, starting a business in a lot of cases, starting a blog in some cases, and breaking it down really, really simply and making those concepts less scary, and then taking it even farther. So I work on with my clients largely getting very clear on like who you are. It sounds so corny. But getting clear on who you are and sort of the relationship that you want to build with your audience, whether it's consumers or whether it's clients or whether it's readers or anything like that. Just people, audience, I guess, in general. And really getting that to translate into your marketing. So a lot of what we work on is sort of the nitty-gritty techie stuff. So setting up the pieces because that's fun for me. And I know it's scary for most people. But also working on the content bits of it as well. And really trying to get like creative because there's a lot of shoulds that go on. I had this conversation with a client just yesterday. There's a lot of shoulds that go on in the world of marketing. And a lot of people will come to me and go, well, I know I should be building a lead magnet and I should. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. So the overall scale, a lot of what I talked about in the masterclass, but the overall sort of map is usually the same for a lot of us. There are shoulds, there are rules and proven strategies, but we try to get at like sort of the fun, creative part of that. So introducing things like video and just being different. I have a client who like loves to draw. So we like integrated all this like drawing into her marketing and it was a huge hit. So just kind of stuff like that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I love hearing that. So, and then how did you get started doing all of this?
To be perfectly honest with you, I got fired from a different job. So it's kind of a fun story. I was a dance teacher for almost 10 years, like nine years or something like that. And I was in school and I was freelancing. You could read about it. I'm sure I have it somewhere, but I say I had like 6 jobs. And one time I counted them up. I no longer remember what they were, but it was like freelance writing and web design and, taking care of tech stuff and an audio techie monkey and a dance teacher. And I got fired from the dance job for a pretty complicated kind of family reason. It wasn't really that I sucked, which, is something that I had to work through. But anyway, and I didn't really know what to do. I was like, well, I have this blog and I'll just do something with it. I'd done marketing for so many companies, small local companies and a couple larger ones as a freelancer before. And I was like, well, you know what, I'll just see where it goes. And I'll be honest with you, it took a lot of soul searching to kind of land on this business model. And even that, I'm going off on a tangent now.
No, that's okay.
I took my glasses off, so I can't see you, Audrey. So it's almost like talking to like space. But anyway, but a lot of it is kind of figuring out your interim business, quote unquote.
Yes.
So like for me, it was, I had all those little businesses, and I kind of make fun of it, like, oh God, Sarah, you just had so many things, but they were all kind of an interim step. And because I did so many different things, a lot of people kind of complain. They're like, oh, I am the Jane of all trades. I do a lot of different things and I can't commit to one thing. And that actually is beneficial, I think, in this sort of new age of entrepreneurship, because there are already companies that niche themselves. And what we need, I believe, is more people who are willing,
multi-talented
and put their own spin on it, like, and stuff like that. And so for me, it was a lot of interim businesses that kind of got me there. And that being said, I don't see this as my forever business either. You know, in a lot of ways, this will probably be an interim step for broadening it even further.
Absolutely. And, I think there's something to be said about that, whether it's authorship or entrepreneurship, which I think they're actually very similar.
I think they're exceedingly similar.
Yes.
Exceedingly.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we all have different steps and different phases we go through. H.M. Ward, who I love to share what I've heard of her story. You can find her interviews. Mark Dawson did an interview with her, and she's very hard to get a hold of for interviews, but thankfully we have this one. And she said one of the things that helped her was having so many of her own businesses. So when she was ready to publish her book herself, she already knew marketing. Right.
Yeah.
And so like me, one of my friends got me started into, I started as a freelance writer for local magazines. And then, I started freelancing on Elance and Upwork, and I was doing really well there, but I still didn't feel like I found my little groove, right?
Yeah.
So I kept exploring, and I got into Beachbody, which I love, and I'm still like a customer / coach for the discount. But, it actually still taught me a lot about, marketing in a way that is friendly and person to person, and actually cares about the person you're talking to and not just their wallet.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so there's so many good things that can come out of all these experiences that we don't have to be stuck in one rut and decide right away what we're going to do, as long as we're exploring and learning, right? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're hitting on something that came up earlier this week in my own work with my coach. And it wasn't me, it was somebody else who said it, but it was the sense that like, and she just articulated it in a way that it was like, that's what I've been trying to say. It was essentially like that need to arrive. That's the way I would phrase it. It's not the way she would have phrased it, but that need to like get to the goal and like feel sorted.
Yeah.
It's not going to come the more you try to like go for something. It's going to come from you, and then the thing will arrive. And it's sort of kind of getting that balance between being okay with an interim strategy and getting to perfection by really getting in touch with yourself. But something else you were saying made me think of like the combination between entrepreneurship and authorship. I think it goes even further. I think marketing is a story.
Yeah. It is.
Because I think of it like a movie trailer or movie marketing. We have this like buildup of what a film's going to be because of what we've seen in the marketing before we ever go into it. And it's like, it's a journey from the second you like hear of something to actually seeing the film.
Exactly. The whole customer experience is a story, and us telling about why we even do what we do is a story, whether it's the, writing, why we write, or, why we do whatever business we happen to be in. Right.
Absolutely.
And again, that can change. And even in authorship, we can start out writing one thing and then totally go to a different genre because we're called to it. And as we write, the more we explore and, deepen a relationship with our own writing self that we have yet to discover, unwrap it,
You're getting so excited. I love it.
I am. I love this stuff. So even though we're laid back, I can't articulate myself pretty well sometimes.
You got it. You got it in the head. And the other thing is, there's a sense of relationship in even that, because you're writing or you're marketing to, or any of those kind of things to a human being. And so there's a sense of relationship. You need to be comfortable enough with yourself, and you need to be comfortable enough to be able to kind of sense what they're actually feeling. Like that's one of the biggest parts, I think, of sales. Because you were saying a second ago that it's not about, you didn't say this, but it's not about like bait switch or like any of those kind of other things. Like I even had a client this week who said, she's like, I'm not really worried about sales. She's like, I want to help people. And I was like, girl, you got it. And that's the whole point. And so, we work on sales strategies and sales calls and sales funnels and stuff like that with the intention that it's about eliminating a sense of codependency on the outcome and really just being there and holding space for a person.
Yeah, absolutely. What are we trying to achieve? Even in a sales call, we're trying to achieve a change, something needed and desired by the person we're trying to help.
Absolutely. And to help them make a decision.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it's not right for everybody. Everything's not right for
Exactly.
everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but
And
that's why there's so much
industries as well.
opportunity. So,
Yeah, that's why there's so many authors and entrepreneurs and
I
coaches.
know.
It's
Well, there's
brilliant.
so many authors, and there can be, and it can be successful if our wonderful authors are willing to step out of their comfort zone and market themselves, put themselves out there to the world. I know it's so hard self-marketing, but you have to put your self out there. They say, oh, the market is oversaturated, and it's like, no, because I tell you what, I have a finite space of bookshelves, right?
Mhm.
And I have finite space on my Kindle, but I have infinite space on the cloud,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And no, even physical books, I just keep buying more. I don't
Girl, you should
stop
see. I
buying
have
books.
3 bookshelves in this room.
Yeah,
Plus, like next to the bedside table is where all the Harry Potters are stacked. And then I
yeah,
have two closets filled
yeah,
with books.
yes. You
Absolutely
should see my
filled.
basement. It's insane. But yeah, and it's not like selling cars. It's selling
Mm.
books to people that can't get enough of books,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But
And
yeah, so
I
much
think
fun.
to a degree hunt it down as well. Like I remember being, and again, it's a certain demographic, but I remember being young and like if there was a book, and still actually, I can think of a book that I did this with. The book was called The Fiddler's Gun. It was a duology by a very little known author called A.S. Peterson. And the book was brilliant. I mean, oh my God, someone recommended this book to me and it was like a printed for you self-publishing deal. And I was like, I don't pay $20 for a book. Like, no way. And someone was like, you have to read it. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
Bought it. And I was like, oh my God. And I sent it to every person that I knew.
yeah.
And I hunted this guy down and tried to see if he'd written anything else. Like, cause and that's what I mean is like, you kind of, people will go out of their way,
Yeah, they will.
to find you,
Absolutely. You
especially
find
in
those
niche markets.
ideal readers. Find your
Yeah.
Annie Wilkes,
Yeah. It's like a cult classic. It's like the Newsies.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the thing, has a huge audience and the budget was like so tiny and everyone's like, what's that movie? And as soon as they watch it, everybody loves it.
Yeah.
That's a weird example. Forgive me.
No, that's
Yeah.
okay. That's awesome. Great
Yeah.
examples. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that you love about what you do when you help people, whether it's authors, because I know you work with one of our authors,
I
and
do.
that
I
is
actually
awesome. I'm
I
hearing
have
great things
two or
about.
three authors, to be honest. I
Really?
do,
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
I
awesome.
do,
So
yeah.
so whether it's authors or straight entrepreneurs, we'll just call it straight up entrepreneurs because
Straight up.
self-marketing, Oh God, I hope that didn't come off wrong.
That is the
But
funniest thing. Continue.
you know, so whether it's authors, fiction or nonfiction, or entrepreneurs doing, some kind of other business type of business, why do you love helping them, and what exactly is it that gives you that moment, I guess, that triggers a dopamine for you when you're
Hmm,
working with these people?
interesting. All right. So there's actually two sides to this, two answers for you, because while I love my business because I now don't have to build websites for a living, I honestly, I avoid that. I had a client who came to me for a website thing about a year ago, and it took me ages to finish it. I mean, it only took me a few hours, but I was like avoiding it like the plague. So while I don't love that, what I do love is getting people to the point where they can do it and see that they're able. And like, for example, I sat down with another one of my authors about 6 months ago, and she was having a really hard time. She had to code something for herself. It was just the platform she was going to, and this company said, you need to code this yourself. And she avoided it. She was like terrified. And I sat down with her in about half an hour, and all I did was teach her HTML. It's very simple. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
And that woman like praised that session. Like she was like, that was the moment that everything changed. And I was like, really? And it was just amazing to see her like, be like, I can do this. I don't have to, cause there's a little bit of a discrepancy, if you were to hire a branding expert or a web designer or a web developer or even if you were to just call like a hosting company like SiteGround, when you don't have the tools to kind of communicate what you really need,
Exactly.
it's a disaster. And it's usually money wasted, time wasted, frustration. You start feeling like crap and everything just sucks. And so, seeing people really understand that they can actually own that and it's something to be learned, it's amazing. And I guess I'm realizing that these two answers kind of go together. Based on recent events is what I keep saying, but there's a sense of communicate. We're talking. I'm going to talk about relationships for a second because we're taught like you need to communicate in a relationship, right? Communication is key, but there's actually something underneath communication. There's a sense of worthiness and self that if that's not there, communication doesn't help. And so that's where my answers kind of converge, because I think the big thing that lights me up, like, believe it or not, I have a lot of personal conversations with my clients, because in order to write and market and publish and, you know, everything like that, personal stuff comes up. It does, because you're like walking straight into a trap of patterns and scariness and all this kind of stuff. And so we talk about it. And one of the greatest things that lights me up is when someone has a breakthrough like that, and it completely like clears away the clouds of responsibility. Responsibility is not scary anymore. It's like something I can actually do to change this. And it makes communication for them easier, and it makes their business easier, and they can like sit down and do it. And it's just like, you know, you wait for that moment when you know the personal conversation is going to come up, and at the end of it, it's like, ah. So that's what I love. So it's not really like, I guess, the day-to-day work so much as,
those
you know, helping people do something, that, you know, you kind of have always wanted to really do and just didn't think that you could.
So you empower.
Ooh. I guess so.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what it sounded like, you know, teaching them, showing them that they can, and giving them, you know, that belief, you know, enabling them. So in a good way.
Yeah. No alcohol, guys.
Yeah.
No, it's funny.
Except the wine fest. So.
Except the wine fest. That was fun.
Oh my God. So when you were creating, back to the course you created for the Author Transformation Alliance, the masterclass, when you were creating that, what was your favorite part of taking what you do and kind of translating that for mostly fiction authors?
I think, interesting. I think the switch, and it ended up being a big conversation, but I think the switch between, it's more of a conceptual switch, but between audiences and readers.
Yeah.
Trying to make that congruent conceptually was really cool, actually. Challenging, I think, in some instances, but really cool, because the concept applies, but the way that we think about both of those are very, very different.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, you know, our readers are going to want, essentially, when people read something, they're in a different space than if they're, you know, getting their website done or, you know, getting help with their marketing. Yes, absolutely. So
I think there's also I'm just hearing it as you say it, there's a mismatch almost, because in readers, and I'm going to overgeneralize, and it's going to sound mean, and it's probably going to ruffle a few feathers, but I'm going to say it anyway. In readers, we tend to think of people, myself included, who are trying to escape in some form or fashion. Even in self-help sometimes, I was about to say not always, but even in self-help sometimes, there's a sense that like, I can't deal with my life right now. I'm going to relax by reading this book. And in an audience, especially in sort of most of the people that I work with are a lot of coaches, or even if they're not coaches, there's a sense that I want this business to work because I want freedom. And that's in a sense fixing yourself. Fixing is the wrong word, but and so you're facing stuff. Right. So in an audience, you're trying to get people to really face the problem. Whereas in a reader, you sense that they don't want to face the problem. So it's kind of a weird balancing act between, you know, and all of the authors that I work with, actually, I'm just realizing, try to get people to face stuff in the way that they're working. And I think that that's really, really powerful. So it's kind of balancing those two.
Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of fiction is a vessel for, you know, an author's opinions or viewpoints on social, cultural issues. You know, we're trying to, you know, bring to light a cultural issue. I'm actually working on one of my very, very secret works in progress, as in it'll take a long time to see the light of day, is about, it's called The Runaway Road. So it's all about, you know, what happens to young girls when they get lured into sex trafficking and trying to escape that life and things like that. So, you know, it's for the reader, it's not an escape. It's, you know, realistic fiction, and it's contemporary, but it's more about, you know, this is, you know, spend a day in the life, but we're going to, of course, fictionalize it. But at the same time, you know, putting that into the hands of everyday people brings that awareness to an issue that's so important, that's overlooked by so many people in our society. So, and of course I write fun stuff too, but, you know, we all have maybe a message we're trying to get out, or even if it's just something about community. I mean, J.R. Tolkien, or Tolkien was just all about, brotherhood and sacrifice, had a lot of allusions to the war and coming back from that and not fitting with the community. So he had so many messages in a high fantasy, and actually a lot of what he did was based on academic research that he put into his fiction, his high fantasy fiction. But, so it's not always just an escape. It's also a way to have a new perspective. So to live 1,000 lives, as the quote goes.
Absolutely. And to feel things that when you're sort of really, really into your head, you wouldn't notice until it potentially is too late.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what would you say, what advice would you have for people, whether it's fiction or nonfiction authors, or people who are trying to convert followers into, buying fans, reading fans, or into clients and customers? Anybody out there, they're trying to convert people, they're trying to figure out their story, and like you've been talking about, come to grips with that personal side so they can, what I'm getting to is speak authentically, right? Because that's something you help with.
Yeah, it is. Actually, the bit of advice I want to give is probably going to be, if someone's not there, it's not going to make any sense, but hopefully I'll say it. It'll be here for posterity and you can come back to it. It is something I work on. I have a smaller program called Book Paying Clients. And what we work on is sales strategies, but what really we're working on is a sense of, how do I explain this in a way that's going to make sense? Okay. So what you're basically saying is how do you, I'm going to break what you said down even more simply. You're asking, how do you make sales authentically? Right? Okay. Yeah. So the biggest word there is authentically. And I think I'm going to pull the relationship metaphor again. There's a sense in sales that I often see. And again, this applies to, sort of a longer term funnel kind of sale, building a platform and then selling to them, or even just a direct, like a sales call sort of situation, or even pitching yourself. Like I'm sure most of your authors have to go into publishing houses. I think it applies here as well. So there's a sense that we often see in sales of kind of needing to please the person, or being very, very nervous, or feeling kind of out of touch. You say your price and you just kind of start shaking and you're like, oh my God, she hasn't responded. I'm going to say words or whatever, that sort of thing. And I describe that actually as codependent. Because in codependency, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to change your own actions based on the reaction of the other person, or the expected reaction.
Oh my God, that it does so apply to relationships.
And it does apply to relationships because it's the same thing. And the example I gave to someone last week was like, imagine, I actually asked, I was like, were you young enough when cell phones were out that you might have texted a love, like teenager, college years or whatever? And she happened to be in college at the time. And so I said, well, that sense you get when you text somebody or they text you and they don't respond and you don't hear from them for a couple of days. And for some reason you get this like urge to control the situation and to text because for some reason you think you need to fight and control and kind of be on top of the situation because you think you can fix something. And it's ironic, but the biggest thing you can do is actually lean back.
Yep, exactly.
Be as whole yourself as possible. And let that person come to you and come to their own decision.
Yeah, being happy regardless of the outcome.
Exactly. Detaching from the outcome, 100%.
It is totally detached.
And so to make sales authentic, you have to feel really, really good yourself. So my advice would be, if you don't feel that way, and I don't all the time, is figure out what it is that's happening for you and go find someone to help you with that. So for a lot of people, it ends up being sort of money mindset, which comes from worthiness. For a lot of people, it comes from like relationship, like past relationship scars, which comes from worthiness. And for some people, it's childhood stuff and it's worthiness. But wherever that kind of you feel the most drawn, go get help with that. Because until you feel really, really sure about yourself, people, it's almost like if you chase somebody down, they're literally going to run away. You can't.
Absolutely.
Physically doesn't work.
Everybody's had that boyfriend or girlfriend that is so clingy, and we don't want to be that person.
Exactly. Or even
we don't want to be like desperate,
Yeah. Or both people. Like I'm thinking of like an ex-boyfriend in college, and like we were both clingy. Like we would send like emails back and forth, and then we get angry at each other for not responding, and that anger would come out. And I mean, it was just like a disaster. And that's what I think of every time. I'm like, the more you push somebody, the more they're going to pull away.
Exactly. You bring it up, you allow it to happen if it will, and then you move on. Right?
Absolutely. And take response. I mean, it sounds such a weird thing to say, but take full responsibility for everything that you can do and let go of the rest. But don't let go too soon. A lot of times we think we have no control over a situation, and there is something that we can
And I think that speaks to what you were saying earlier about, being able to sense what the other person is feeling. So we really have to, I guess, boost those empathic skills and be open to sensing what's going on with them. I would say not over analyzing, but maybe examining, even if it's over text or if it's calls, paying really close attention to what that person is saying and not just thinking about the next thing we're going to say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my favorite coaches did that one time. There were 30 of us sitting in a room, and he passes the microphone to the first person. He goes, right, introduce yourself, say blah, 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 whatever else. And then he actually pulled the microphone back and he goes, but guys, listen to each person. Don't you dare think about what you're going to say until you get this microphone in your hand. He was like, wait 5 minutes if you have to while something comes to you, but do not think about it. And then he handed the microphone, and every single person like kind of paused for a second and goes, okay, I am. And then they were
That's such a great exercise.
It is great. And it's something I never noticed that I did until he mentioned it. And I was like,
I know.
Oh my God, I do that.
I felt so guilty the first time I heard it. I was like, I don't want to be a bad listener.
Relationships.
I know.
Oh, that's so funny.
Oh my goodness. So, again, I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but,
Take it away, girl.
What kind of last message, and we kind of do a send off with that, but at the same time, what last message would you have for anybody out there who is, who wants to convert like magic?
Convert like magic. When I came up with that name, I was thinking of Walt Disney. I described my business and somebody was like, you sound like you love Disney and you want to be a filmmaker. And I was like, that's the name then.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would be my advice for someone to convert like magic? If something's not converting, which is kind of what I'm hearing you say. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I imagine you won't know, like conversion magic, the program that I actually do itself is my highest one. It doesn't work if you don't already have something. So set it all up first. That would be my first. Just go for it. Whatever you think you should do, just try it. But in order to improve it.
So say they've got everything set up and there's no sales coming in, no book sales, no coaching sales, no whatever sales.
Exactly. The first thing I would say is go back to that masterclass, draw out a map and get numbers. Honest to God, like look at the cold hard facts, see how many views you got here, views you got here, views you got here, check for consistency, check for all those things we talk about. But beware that the reason I brought up mindset in that class is because if the numbers are fine, the problem is you.
Yeah.
And that sounds weird and it sounds woo and it sounds ridiculous, but I swear to God, the problem is you somehow.
Absolutely. Well, and that's not even like an insulting thing. It's like when you feel fulfilled, your copy reflects that. So, or your video or whatever you create reflects where you stand internally. If you are standing on shaky ground, your copy is not going to, follow through for people.
Exactly.
Right?
And if there's that sense of, because that codependency often shows up in even like Facebook posts. You can feel people being like, well, my coach told me I had to say something about a personal story today, so I'm going to just share this, and I don't know where it's going. And you can feel it leaking.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the example I love to give, and it's such a weird one, but I actually usually say, like, think of a Disney princess. Actually, earlier today, I got a brilliant, perfect example that was redundant from a client. I said, think of a Disney princess. We were actually talking about relationships, ironically. And I said, think of a Disney princess. And she said, Belle. And I was like, that is a freaking perfect example, because think about it. Like, Belle never is setting out to please. Yet we're all magnetized to her energy because she's so independent and smart and strong and just knows what to do to make herself feel better, knows what she needs, knows how to, be happy on her own. She knows,
she makes the best of being locked up in a castle.
The girl's like so happy. I'm like, perfect. And so, that again, it's a little bit feather ruffling to say, be a whole, complete woman, but that's essentially it is embody for yourself as much as you can. It sounds so weird.
It does, but it's so true.
Yeah, that person that we all admired, and it's not because, she could have walked down the street not looking at a single person and we all would have all looked at her because she's so complete herself.
Yeah. Confident, the air of confidence, maybe it comes off a little lackadaisical, but it's just like almost carefree. Carefree.
Exactly. Or like what you picture the perfect relationship as is like you spinning around like the campfire singing to yourself and the husband just sitting there gazing. That person is what you need to embody.
Exactly. Oh my God, that's wonderful. And real quick to wrap up, where can people find you? And of course, I'll list it in the description, so don't worry about that.
Should, because my name is super hard to spell. Nobody can figure it out, but it's SarahElizabethLahoud.com, or my Facebook page is the same name. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yep, I'll have everything listed below. So
fabulous. Yeah.
And and we'll of course link your opt-in in the description too. So do you have one in mind that you're going to use specifically for this?
No.
I think you do have one that we linked.
Gave you one. Yeah. So go for that one. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's related to the same concept of, making sure that everything matches up. So
absolutely.
Definitely guys, check that out. Check out Sarah's links. You won't be disappointed. So thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.